Pope calls for 24 hours of peace after Russian attacks on Ukraine, and how President of Ukraine reveals 20-point peace plan for the first time. That is news next. Pope Leo XIV is saddened that Russia refused a Christmas ceasefire in Ukraine and once again called for 24 hours of peace, Vatican News reports.
I once again make this appeal to all people of goodwill, that at least on the feast of the birth of the Savior.
Leo XIV said this during an address from Castel Gandolfo on the evening of December 23rd. Speaking to journalists, he also commented on Russia's refusal of a Christmas ceasefire.
Truly, among the things that cause me great sadness in these days is the fact that Russia has apparently refused the request for a Christmas truce.
Leo XIV once again called on Russia to agree to a ceasefire at Christmas.
Perhaps they will listen to us, and there will be 24 hours, one full day of peace throughout the world.
About Christmas ceasefire, earlier German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called on Russia to declare a Christmas ceasefire with Ukraine. He expressed confidence that this could become a prologue to a permanent ceasefire. The proposal was supported by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who emphasized that much in this matter depends on Russia's political will. However, in Moscow, the idea of a Christmas ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia was cynically rejected. Dmitry Peskov, spokesman for Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, said this.
We want peace. We do not want a ceasefire that would give Ukraine time to rest and prepare to continue the war.
At the same time, Zelenskyy warned that Russia may resort to massive strikes on Ukraine during the Christmas period. The peace plan, which Ukraine, the US and Russia have been discussing for 2 months now, consists of 20 points. However, in addition to the basic document, there are also separate appendices on specific areas, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy tells journalists at the meeting. So a draft peace plan is currently being discussed, a political document between Ukraine, the US, Europe and Russia. According to Zelenskyy, the 20 points of the plan contain references to other possible documents. In addition to the peace plan itself, there are the following documents: a trilateral document on security guarantees, Ukraine, the US and Europe; a bilateral document, security guarantees for Ukraine from the US; a roadmap for Ukrainians' prosperity, a document developed with the US on recovery and economic development, containing a vision for development until 2014. A roadmap for Ukrainians' prosperity, a document developed with the US on recovery and economic development, containing a vision for development until 2040. Peace plan for Ukraine, confirmation of Ukrainian sovereignty. An unconditional non-aggression agreement between Russia and Ukraine is expected. A monitoring mechanism will be set up on the line of contact. Ukraine will get solid security guarantees. The number of armed forces of Ukraine personnel will be 800,000 in peacetime. The US, NATO and Europe will provide Ukraine with security guarantees in accordance with Article 5. If Russia invades Ukraine, there will be a military response and the restoration of sanctions. If Ukraine invades Russia or opens fire on Russian territory without provocation, the security guarantees will be cancelled. If Russia opens fire on Ukraine, the security guarantees will come into force. There was also an addition about compensation for the US for the guarantees, but this has now been deleted. Bilateral security guarantees are not excluded under this agreement. In particular, countries of the coalition of the willing can join the security guarantees. Russia will enshrine its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine in all necessary laws. Ukraine will become a member of the EU at a specific time and will receive short-term privileged access to the European market. EU membership for Ukraine is part of the security guarantees, and we want to set a date for accession. It provides for a robust global development package for Ukraine, which will be defined in a separate investment agreement and will include, in particular, a development fund for investment, development of gas infrastructure, reconstruction of territories, extraction of minerals and natural resources. Several funds will be created to address recovery issues. The goal is to raise $800 billion. After signing this agreement, Ukraine will accelerate the process of concluding a free trade agreement with the US. America's position is that they are talking about a free trade agreement with Ukraine and a free trade agreement with Russia, also Ukrainians' non-nuclear status. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. No compromise has been reached on this issue. The US proposes joint management between Ukraine, the US, and Russia. The three parties will receive dividends. The US proposes 33% for 33% for 33%, and the Americans will be the chief managers. Ukrainians' compromise proposal that NPP is separated jointly by the US and Ukraine 50-50, but 50% of the electricity produced goes to Ukraine, and the US independently determines the distribution of the other 50%. At the same time, that NPP, Enerhodar and Kakhovka HPP must be demilitarized. Ukraine and Russia undertake to implement educational programs in schools and throughout society that promote understanding and tolerance of different cultures and eliminate racism and prejudice. Ukraine will introduce EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of minority languages. Territories, the most difficult point. The proposal was as follows: in the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, the line of troop deployment on the date of this agreement is the de facto recognized line of contact. Russia must withdraw its troops from the Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Sumy and Kharkiv regions for this agreement to enter into force. Ukrainians' position. As Zelenskyy explained, Russia wants Ukraine to withdraw from the Donetsk region while the US is offering a compromise, a free economic zone. If there is no agreement on staying where we are, then a free economic zone can only be accepted through a referendum. At the same time, Zelenskyy noted that the US wants a referendum, but according to him, the entire document should be put to a vote, not a separate issue. A referendum requires a minimum of 60 days, and we need a real ceasefire for 60 days. After agreeing on future territorial agreements, both Russia and Ukraine undertake not to change these agreements by force. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River and the Black Sea for commercial purposes. A separate maritime agreement and an access agreement covering freedom of navigation and transport will be concluded. As part of this agreement, the Kinburn Spit will be demilitarized. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues: exchange of prisoners of war, return of civilian hostages, including children and political prisoners, and resolution of problems and suffering of victims of the conflict. Ukraine must hold elections as soon as possible after the agreement is signed. This agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council chaired by Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations. Once all parties agree to this agreement, a complete ceasefire will take effect immediately. It is also expected that Ukraine will submit the agreement to Parliament for ratification and/or hold a nationwide referendum for approval. Ukraine may decide to hold elections at the same time as the referendum. The agreement will come into force after both parties fulfill their obligations. Security guarantees will only come into force if the agreement is fully ratified or approved by referendum. About elections and referendum in Ukraine. Zelenskyy recently stated that the issue of territories should be decided by the Ukrainian people through elections or a referendum. He later noted that the issue of a referendum is not currently on the table and that the Ukrainian team is looking for solutions during the negotiations. As for the issue of elections, a working group has been formed in parliament to draft a law. The issue at hand is holding elections under martial law. As explained by Parliament Speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, this refers to presidential elections, and the law will be a one-time measure. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.